Welcome to another episode of Information Return Intelligence. I'm your host, Jason Dinesen. This fast moving weekly podcast, we cover all things related to 1099s and other information reporting news. This time around, it's our What's New episode, and we actually don't have a lot to talk about. We can wrap this one up fairly quickly. As you're listening to this, it could be any time, but as this episode drops, we're heading into mid-January, and you may have started filing your 1099s already or will be very soon. So there's not a whole lot that falls under the heading of what's new for this month, which is good. You could focus on getting your forms filed, and then the other stuff maybe can come later in the year, like the W-9 that Deborah Richardson and I talked about last week. As I record this, the draft of the W-9 is still in draft status. So that's not something that's under what's new. I mean, it kind of is, but we've talked about it. You know that the dollar threshold is changing. We've talked about that. Just a few other what's new notes. Electronic filing opened on January 6th for 1099s. So you could have started back then if you were ready to. Iris and Fire are both open. Iris this year can accommodate Form 1042S. It couldn't in prior years, but it can this year, 2025 versions of the 1042S. The IRS also notes that if you have Form 1099-DA to file, that's the digital asset reporting form, only IRIS can receive that form. Fire cannot receive it. You're probably not filing a 1099-DA. That has to do with like certain brokerages reporting digital asset transactions. So think of like cryptocurrency. Probably doesn't apply to you, but if it does, you can only send it in to IRIS. Another thing to watch is Form 1042. So you have the 1042S, that goes to the other party. It also goes to the IRS. That's for your foreign vendors in certain transactions. You have to file a 1042S. But there's also a form called Form 1042 with no S on it. Form 1042. That is a summary form of all of your 1042S filings. And so that form is subject to the e-file mandate, which means you have to e-file it. The problem is that it doesn't go to IRIS or Fire. It goes to a different system at the IRS called MEF. Now, what's the big deal about that? Well, if you're using a vendor for all of your filings, not every vendor is hooked up to MEF. Most of them are nowadays, but some of them are not. And so if you have to file Form 1042, you'll need to think about what your plan is for getting it e-filed. Talk to your vendor, or if you do things in-house, you're going to need to figure out a plan. And this really is the first year we've had to deal with this, because in prior years, the IRS has always come out with exceptions to electronic filing for Form 1042, where they've said it's okay to mail it to us. They have not done that yet this year. Now, it's not due till March 15th, so there is time for them to get that exception put out, but we don't have it at this time. So if you have to file Form 1042, talk to your provider if you have one to see if they can accommodate e-filing. And if they don't, you'll need to figure out what you're going to do with that and keep watching to see if the IRS issues an exception again this year. And then the IRS just last week put out the 2026 version of publication 1099. And that is the general instructions for information returns, such as the 1099. The main thing of note in that, under what's new, is that the IRS reiterates that they're targeting the end of this year as the shutdown of fire. Now, some people have said that, well, surely they won't go through with this, the shutdown of fire. Surely they'll kick the can down the road at some point, and they might. That wouldn't surprise me if they did. But it's pretty clear that their intention is that December of 2026 is when they're going to pull the plug on fire. They put it in writing again in this publication. I also counted in publication 1099 the number of mentions of fire versus the number of mentions of iris. Fire is only mentioned 3 times in the entire publication. Those 3 mentions are all in that one paragraph about how fire is going to be shut down. Iris is mentioned 26 times. So it's pretty clear, I think, what the IRS's intentions are with their information return e-filing systems. Well, that'll do it for what's new for this time around. Join us again next week on Information Return Intelligence.